So I'll start by quickly addressing your question, why we're called the Newt. So we're called the Newt because we have a population of great crested newts on the estate and within the formal gardens. Originally, we were called Hadspun House because of Hadspun House and the Hadspun estate. And we still have the main house, which is still known as Hadspun House. But the new estate and gardens got renamed the Newt because of in homage to the Newts, and let's say probably the cost and trouble they caused in the development of what's occurred. So we're on a historical site of an old garden of many historical features, but we've undergone a huge restoration and redevelopment. So the Newts had to be cared for and looked after. So we've because of the trouble they caused, we called ourselves the Newt, I believe. So I'm going to run through what I do. So my name is Andy Lewis. I'm the lead fruit grower here at the Newt. We are a team in the fruit team, which I've just managed to break away from ornamentals, let's say, of 1.5, I guess. So we're pretty busy in terms of what we do. And we are a building and growing garden. So we keep making new areas or creating new areas, which often ends up with some fruit, or especially trained fruit. I look at walls differently now. Whenever I see a wall, I just think, oh, what can we grow up that? What can we do? Which normally ends up in me having to do more work, but that's fine. It keeps us in the job, which is great. So I've been here around 7 years, and as I say, we've undergone quite a large restoration. And what we're looking at here is known as the parabola, which is our walled garden. It has this unique D shape. And as far as I'm aware, there may be one other garden in Scotland with this D shape. This is our architects that tell me this, but I'm not too sure. But the parabola leads to that name and shape. So complete redevelopment. Also, I said it was Hadspun House and the Hob houses, and also historically the Pope's garden here. So it used to be an ornamental garden that was lost over time. So it was a complete blank canvas for our owners and more importantly, our lead garden designer and architect to redevelop. So it was turned into what it is now, which is our collection, which you can't see here at the minute, but our collection of trained apple trees. So within here, we have 660 apple trees, which translates into about 300 different varieties, and they're all laid out in their county of origin. So the idea was to give people as much interest as possible in terms of finding old varieties, but also varieties from their home county or trees they used to know about. So as we're going to take in this, we're also going to look at the various aspects of the outside wall. So running along here is our south wall, so we'll get to have a look at that. And that's an area that obviously is a lot more sun-drenched, so we have our plums and cherries there, which we'll get to. And then as we come to the outside of the wall here, this is east-facing. So we're going to run along here with the slides, hopefully. And then you go from east and it runs into north-facing here. So our Shady Walls. So this is something that our visitors, so we're an open garden. We have daily visitors as well as hotel guests, and we run garden tours. So we find out what people are really interested in and the reason people visit gardens in terms of, you know, for to be inspired, but also to learn. And the question we get is, what can we grow in a shady wall or a shady spot? So these particular parts of the wall are interesting for people to have a look at. So we'll go to the next slide. And so we're going to be here in our next slide, just so you get an idea. And what we have are 6 plateaus within the walled garden. And these have our sort of larger significant trees. So this is the man, Gilles Guillou. So I mentioned Patrice Taravella earlier. He's our lead garden architect, and he's one part of the duo that is Patrice and Gilles. And Patrice and Gilles created a monastic garden in France called Puer de Orsay in the Loire Valley, and they created that over 20 years. And Patrice being the designer, and Gilles is known as the espalier artist. So I've been lucky enough to work alongside Gilles. He's come over for the past 4 or so years. COVID obviously put a bit of an end to that. So when he next comes back, I'll probably be in trouble because he's left it to me for the last 2 years or so. But a complete inspiration to the garden. He really is a true espalier artist. Everything we do for reason and purpose. It's looking at most importantly, the utilitarian work, making sure it's done for a reason. What are we going to achieve? But then second to that is the sort of the aesthetical quality and the art form within it. So everything we're doing is to create something, but it's also, we know we're a garden that's open to the public, and we want it to look good and people to enjoy it, and really to inspire people and give people ideas. So we'll move on. So I'm going to talk about the various walls, but can't really talk about our trained fruit without talking about our wooden structures, because it's just so pivotal, and this is a big thing that we've taken from Gilles. So this is early on before we planted. You can see we still have the building site at the other side of the wall, but we were safe-ish within the walls of the walled garden. So wooden structures, these are sweet chestnut larves. The installation of the wooden structures was roughly 2 years, give or take, with various jobs going on and various plantings. And I take this quote from Gilles: is trained fruit's only ever as good as the wooden structure you're supporting it with. It's so important. If you need a vertical cordon for that structure you're tying to be perfectly vertical, bamboo is fine, but that rots off in 2 or 3 years really, and it's not always as straight as what a larve might be. The irony was, when we were doing this installation, I recently bought my house, so I was removing larve and plaster from the inside of my house whilst at work installing larves. So it was a bit of an undertaking. So I know we're going to talk more about trained systems and vine eyes and wires. The whole of the inside of the wall has vine eyes and wired system. So then it was attaching the chestnut larves with wires. So I'd never really done it before, but I did a quick count up while I was prepping for this presentation, and just the walls, so the inside walls of the walled garden, there was around, we'll go to the next one, around 4,000 of these that we put on to attach the larves to the walls. So you can see why it took us 2 years, along with other jobs. And one day we were doing it, and the owner, who's always around, he sort of thanked us for what he was doing and is always interested in what we're doing. He said, one day this will be in a gardener's magazine or something. And I said, okay, great, that's good. When your fingers get pretty sore doing it. They never did make it there so far. And to be honest, you put so much work and effort trying to make it as beautiful as possible, and it's such an important part of it. But once you get the trees on it, you actually lose all those wires. But I think what it gives you is, whenever we have our visitors, it gives intrinsic value. Everyone can sort of feel the time and effort that has gone into it, and the care. They also see us working and see the care and the attention. But realistically, once the trees get away, once you have foliage and the distance you are, you don't actually see the time you've taken into doing that. But I feel it's an important part of it, and it's what people really enjoy looking at and seeing when they visit the garden. So what we have here is that same wall that we looked at. And as I said, we have 660 trees. On our inside wall, it's all French varieties, all Renette apples. And the idea was that these trees were planted as 6-year-old trees, so pre-trained in France and Belgium. Gilles sourced these. And the idea was, we just wanted something a little more mature for our visitors to see when we open in 2019. The vast majority of trees we planted were all just maidens, and that's all our English varieties. But these were a little older, something larger, and also, you could see we had fruit after we had the first 2 years of removing fruit. Then we allowed them to fruit, and we came across that. So this is back across the garden a bit. So what we have is a collection of various forms within the walled garden. Diagonal cordons, Belgian fence, palmette oblique, arculepage, which we'll look at in a minute. So another part of our sweet chestnut larves. And really the idea is, with our wooden structures, it really gives formality to the garden. It shows people what you're trying to achieve. And the way this garden is laid out is the idea is an apple maze. So before the trees have got to their full height, it does give you that structure and formality in the garden. Coming from Patrice, our designer, he created the walled garden in a Baroque style. So from that first image, you should see how geometric and formal the flowing paths were. And the idea with trained fruit is with that Baroque theme is order on nature. So we're sympathetically manipulating the trees, I tell our visitors when they get worried about us cutting them back or tying them in. So we're going a bit further. Again, so this is creation, Chestnut Larves again. This was a common sight, piles of larves as you're working. The idea with these, they should last 20 to 25 years, I've been told, promised by Gilles. And they you know, they've been in for 4 or 5 years now, I think. And, you know, they soften in terms of they don't look like fresh wood anymore. I mean, soften on the eye, but they're still very hard, and hopefully I won't be redoing them anytime soon. So that's the same Belgian fence, but with the trees in. So I think that picture's a year or so ago. And as you can imagine, as maidens, they were all planted as sort of single whips. So we've got a lot of formative pruning and forming shaping of the trees. As we go, lots of tying in, lots of pruning. All right, so I put this one in because I know we're going to talk more about modified and full lorette pruning systems, and I guess we go with the full lorette system through our education from Gilles. We prune in February, June, August, and then also a little bit in sort of September, October time. And this image I put in because it, for me, gives reason and value to why we should. This is before we've pruned in June. I'm going to steal this quote from Jim Buckland when I took a trip to West Dean, is that trained fruit should always look like trained fruit. Right now, this isn't looking so trained. It looks a bit more like a hedge or a bush against the wall. So there's no clear leaders tied in, and we haven't cut back. It's really nice, and I love it when it is like this because it looks healthy. But for me, when I look at it, you know, we need to be tying in and we need to be cutting back, and it's really nice to see that. And I don't have this, I'm afraid, the before and after, when you see this, and then after you've cut back, to really, and then take it back to that formality and showing the design. But then again, it also shows with the wooden structures, giving you that look beyond that. So I've got 2 pictures now. This particular variety. So this is our double horizontal cordon. And I just put this in, we've just finished winter pruning now. And I just put it in because it just, from Gilles, he's given us our education on how we should work with our trees, and the idea with to always fill our bottom tier before moving up onto our second tier, whether it's a horizontal cordon like this or an espalier, and with our various pruning regimes. So I think this is 1, 2, 4 years, looking like 4 years in the making. So each year, each winter prune, we cut back to around 30 centimeters, like this. So we knew that it would take 4 or 5 years to fill here. So we would cut our vertical leader here, a much harder cut to have in that 5-year period. That was our final cut there. So we come up to here, and now we've achieved this full length. So now we're ready to begin this one, because a tree always just wants to be a tree, and it's always going to send the vigor and the main growth to the top. But now we've achieved this tier, we can work on. So I put that one in there. Oh yes, I did mention the counties. Anyway, we're in Wiltshire now, just so you know. We just recently ran some of our workshops, and visitors and people very interested to be like, oh, I'm in Wiltshire now, in Somerset, and it's, you know, it really does give value and interest to people having the different counties. So I took a picture of these 2 trees, Arcueil lepage. So it's my favorite form within our walled garden. Just like, I like the artful sort of bending on it, and the form. It's a bit tricky. So these are 2 of the better specimens. We have ones that aren't as good as this. But the reason I took these 2 is just because with what we're trying to do here is really to get all our bends as sharp as possible. Again, coming back to that Baroque nature and order on nature, is to get, you know, almost right angle corners in what we're doing. So it makes me happy, especially this one. It's always easy to get this bend to go nice and straight because it always wants to go up. It's this one where you're trying to actually bend it over. But I'm happy with what we're doing there. And bringing it back to Gilles again, I remember the first year we were training these. So the first year they were just vertical cordons, and the first job was to bend them in to go this way. And I was working for a couple and did one, and of course it snapped because it's quite a harsh bend we're doing it. And he just ignored it. It was, you know, it's one of those things that happens. But at that point, I'd only been working with him for a number of months. I was like, oh, didn't want to, you know, just hated it, didn't want to do it. And he goes, oh, it doesn't matter, just cut it back very hard to a bud below the point of interest. And he says, we try again next year. So it's really, you know, and what I found with running workshops is to give people confidence and to tell people that it's fine, it's okay, it's easy. So yeah, there's a couple of nice trees, I thought, in Wiltshire. So within our walled garden, predominantly all dessert fruits, but what we do have is a few sections of crab apples. The idea is to have a prolonged season of fruits later in the year, but also a significant blossom show. So I have 3 slides here of our crab apples. So this was taken last week as well. So this is Red Sentinel, I think. So bursting bud first, just coming along. And then I've got the 3 seasons. And really, you know, if we're talking about environment and aspects and microclimates, this particular part of the wall here is incredibly dark. This is so this is north facing, right in the corner here, and we always joke about this tree here. This one at the very end is a vertical cordon, and it's Jelly King. It's absolutely fine. It's right here in the middle, and it's just as vigorous as these ones here. So it shows that crab apples are pretty tough at coping. So it's actually a different wall, but it's the same train regime. So you can see why we have the crab apples for blossom along there. So we've kind of freestyled what we did here, starting as vertical cordons, but then we've gone with crisscross design that you can see in the first picture. So we have traditional training methods like the Belgian fence and those kind of things, but also making up some unique features. Again, people love to see that kind of stuff. And then another part of the crab apples. Again, you can see why we need to do our June prune. I couldn't wait till August to prune this back. It'd be, you know, it'd be ridiculous. And also because we're in the formative years of forming the trees, we really want to get the vigor into the leaders. So, you know, we need to tie these leaders in and get that shape tied in. Then also check back our laterals, and you can see fruit there that needs to get some additional light to it. So we definitely need to prune a few times over the year. Okay, so we've left the apples. So I probably spend about 70% of my time with the walled garden, whether it's inside it or outside it, and then we have various other plantings that we work on. But here we have our south wall, so obviously a sun-drenched wall, your traditional wall, and this was taking a week or so ago again, I believe. I'll go, oh, sorry. Okay, so same picture pretty much, but it looks possibly a bit nicer. But I also always talk to our visitors. We run daily garden tours about the value of trained fruit for winter interest. You know, this is lovely and it's nice, looks healthy, but really if people want to see the spurs and see the shape and the form of the trees, winter is often the best time. So if you're trying to create a garden for winter interest, I always say trained fruit is a good thing to do. So sun-drenched wool, fig, cherry, plum, damson, quince, various fruits all along our south wall, all tied in. And I really enjoyed the picture from Kate, I think it was earlier, of the wall. I really like seeing, I know the wall was bare, but when I look down the wall, I like to see like your border was very narrow as well. It's really the trick and the art, and what gives me the most pleasure is if I put my head almost against the wall and look down it and see that everything's only 20 or so centimeters off the wall. That's what gives me the greatest pleasure, is trying to see that everything's, and that's just a series of tying it. You know, we do as much or more tying in than pruning, really, to really keep that formality. So that's the south wall again, and it's just to highlight again, it's more of the sweet chestnut larves, and it just in the early years of the trees, it just helps to give you added interest. It shows what you're trying to achieve with your fans, and again, winter interest. And you know, from visitor experience, people really enjoy seeing these kind of things, and it inspires them to create these. So this was quite early on after planting, and that looks like a quince blossom. Okay, so
Andy, we're getting towards the end of your slot.
Okay, I'll rush through this. Sorry. So we tie in everything on our south wall with white sheets. We've got a hotel here. So rather than using the linen like they did traditionally in France, we've got a hotel with upcycled white sheets. So again, it's something that gives people interest. Cherry tree here. We talked about a low wall earlier in Susan's one. So we have a low wall here. It's just part of it. So now this year we're bending our branches. And so for the next few years, we're going to create freestyle curves coming over. We'll see if that works out. Mirabelle in an open book fan. So vine eyes and wires. At the end of larves, you've got the issue of movement. So we use nails. So if anyone's got issues with larves and things like that, it's a good technique to use. We talked about medlars the other day. This is on medlar wool. We've got the buds bursting here, and again, it's just to show the nail how it works there. So outside wall, this is the east-facing wall, so a bit more shady, early sun and early morning and early afternoon sun. So again, it's creating these larves. Gooseberry, so gooseberry blackcurrant's tolerant to that kind of thing, and that's running on the east wall like we talked about, and it runs further up to the north. So how long have we got? 1 minute?
Go on then.
Okay, sorry. So freestyle, we created this form. Using this book, we came up with an idea for these. And this is moving around to the north face of our wall. So we have sour cherries and medlars, so shade tolerant varieties. This is a morello within its first few years, and it's got a little bigger now establishing. So a shade tolerant tree that will hopefully give us fruit for our chefs. West facing wall, same design. You see how the nails are holding this, and this is actually a persimmon. So we've got 5 or 6 different persimmons, no flowers or fruits yet, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll see how it goes. But it's worth it just for the foliage almost within that. This is our north wall. So pink, white, and red currants running around the wall. We have vertical cordon pears and josterberries. Josterberries seem to be vigorous wherever you put them. So the idea is they encircle here, and then this is a year old. We've actually got them along here. So the idea is to maximize wall space and really to fill it up. This area wasn't actually finished when we opened, and people, did I leave it in? Yeah, so people were visiting. I put this in because to prove that I do actually do some work. People really enjoyed seeing that kind of thing. So I said 1 minute. Crowns are another thing. You have to come and visit the gardens. Rather than pruning, we bend the branches. The idea is to slow the sap down, get buds to burst along here. I like this one because if this wasn't bent round, it'd be about 2 or 3 feet long. But by bending it, we're getting this feature going on. But also it means that our fruit is going to be within that 15 centimeters or so close to the main, because our next tree is here. So we've got to keep everything close. Crown, 3 years old, naturally grafting in terms of, art form within trees. People love seeing this stuff. It's great for a grafting workshop to prove to people that trees will graft naturally, to give people confidence. So in terms of things like this, stones to weigh down the laterals. This one was an over vigorous shoot like this. So by using the stone to weigh it down, it's bent it down. With pruning as well, where then hopefully it looks like a fruit bud here. People really enjoy these kind of things. There's little features within the garden that they notice. This is another wall garden that we're working on. So a new design of larves, and then I'll end it here with our cider house, because everyone loves cider in Somerset. So we've got a variety of cider trees here. They have a series of single varieties: Kingston Black, Yarlington Mill, and Red Streak. So we've planted those on MM106 rootstocks to fill the bottle, and this is on an M25 rootstock, Harry Masters, and we've just got to get it to the top. I've pruned this. We got to here, somewhere around here, and I've pruned it back to around here this year. So another year or so, and we'll fill the fill the apple, get to the top, take another oil to fill it. And that's it, and that's College Dream. So that's it.